As we've covered on the show, the place to watch the anti-democratic vanguard of the American right is in state Republican parties and Republican-held state legislatures. Well, today, the Republican Speaker of the House in Wisconsin announced he has hired retired police officers to, quote, investigate the 2020 election. And those investigators will have, quote, a broad mandate to spend about 3 months reviewing all tips and will have subpoena power. Is the latest in a trend of local Republicans starting investigations in order to cast doubt on the 2020 election results, to backfill the facts to fit the big lie about it being stolen when it wasn't. And in Arizona, that farcical and dangerous audit is once again underway after a pause to allow previously scheduled high school graduations in the audit space. And the Republican-led House Appropriations Committee just stripped the Democratic Secretary of State of any role in elections-related litigation. They passed those powers on to the state's Republican Attorney General for the remainder of her term. Next door in Nevada, the local Republican Party censured their own Republican Secretary of State for not finding any evidence of widespread voter fraud. And the censure vote happened at a Republican Party meeting last month. And we have now learned that an avowed member of the far-right street-brawling group, the Proud Boys, was invited to that Republican Party meeting and helped cast the deciding votes to censure the Secretary of State. As always, when we need to make sense of what is happening in Nevada politics, I want to bring in MSNBC political analyst John Ralston, the editor of the Nevada Independent. Thank you for being here, John. All right, let's walk me through the chain of events here. You've got a Republican state elected leader, a state secretary of state, who, somewhat like Brad Raffensperger in a sort of less vocal terms, vouched for the integrity of an election that was actually free and fair and got flack for it. Is that right?
That's an understatement, Chris. She was sued several times. She was vilified by Republicans. They had before, right after the election, Trump sent Rick Grinnell and Matt Schlapp out here with the former Attorney General Adam Laxalt to spread all kinds of lies about voter fraud. And Barbara Sagaski, who is, as you mentioned, the only statewide elected Republican in Nevada, stood up to them. She was under immense pressure, of course, as the overseer of elections to do something. And the person who was standing next to all of these folks throughout this was the chairman of the state Republican Party. I'm trying to bring this to what's going on now, Chris. Michael McDonald, who is the person who has been accused by the local Clark County Party of allowing these Proud Boys into the Republican meeting, and they are now boasting, although it is not clear to me that their boasts are true, that they were the decisive votes in censuring Sagaski. By the way, Chris, that vote was very close. It was, I believe, 126 to 112. It almost didn't pass, and that's another reason I think that the Proud Boys are boasting that they were the decisive.
So the Republican State Party, under the leadership of Michael McDonald, convenes a meeting in which they consider a censure resolution directed, and we've seen this in state party after state party, right? State parties censuring Republican officials who did not overturn democracy and overturn the will of the voters, right? So in Nevada, you've got this one where Michael McDonald convenes. It's a close vote, so it's not like the parties sort of split on this. And the information we have now is that this individual, Matt Anthony, and I want to sort of read a quote of his. Most of the average people out here are starving for some kind of old school tactics that used to go down in this city, because that's what we need right now. We need toughness. We don't need keyboard warriors. We should note that Proud Boys have been involved in physical assaults in a number of places. That guy and his maybe associates were actually at that meeting. And the question is, who invited them there?
That is the question, and McDonald denies having anything to do with it. But as you mentioned, these guys, as the Proud Boys are everywhere, are creeps and thugs, and they always want to act like they're the big men on campus. And so, again, Chris, they may be boasting of this. Yeah. This is also, there are many layers to this. The reason that vote was so close is emblematic of what's going on in this country inside the Republican Party, where you have the adherents to Trump fighting with the people who say, wait a second, let's move beyond this. This is not a good brand for the Republican Party. And yet the state Republican Party, led by Michael McDonald, even after Biden was inaugurated, was still filing complaints with the Secretary of State, with Barbara Sagaski. They brought boxes of what they called evidence of 20,000 or so spoiled ballots and all this other nonsense, which Sagaski, again, to her credit, Chris, took weeks to investigate and then essentially came out and said this is utter nonsense. The state Republican Party is still pushing this. And part of what's going on is there are people in the Republican Party, in the Clark County Party, which is Las Vegas, who want McDonald gone because they think he is going to prevent them, and what he is doing is going to prevent them from winning elections. And there are two very important elections in Nevada, as you know, next year, Chris, one for governor and one for U.S. Senate. And the Republicans, the smart Republicans, are very worried about all of this going on now and a continuation of the Michael McDonald Trump Proud Boy influence on the party.
Yeah, this dynamic where you have the state party leader basically targeting for pressure, condemnation, censure, elected Republicans in office. This has been repeated in state after state after state. In Nevada, it's one, you can get away with it a little more in a state like Texas, right? Where you're not in this sort of perilous position of really fighting over these 3 or 4 percentage point margins in statewide elections where Republicans have been close but not gone over the hump. But there's a bigger cost to pay in your state.
There is a much bigger cost. And what I say to people and what a lot of people realize is that if Adam Laxalt, who I mentioned is the leader of the Big Lie campaign in this state, the former attorney general, ran for governor, if he had been governor, a lot of different things might have happened if the Republicans had actually had any influence in Carson City in the legislature. This might have been a different story, which is really frightening, Chris.